Hey, welcome back to another podcast. Sorry for the delay on this one. I've been trying to figure out what I wanted to do for a topic because the two topics that I've been trying to want to tackle, I have kind of reserved for a collaboration with some friends. So I decided that this time around I was going to kind of do a ramble about what I miss about video gamings, what I felt was really strong back in the 90s, that in the early 2000s even, that feels like it's kind of been lost today. Because I mean, everybody kind of loses their way every once in a while. We see it in everything. Movies were almost always considered better in the '90s and the '80s and things like that. But what is it about gaming that I miss? What without trying to put on too much of nostalgia tinting here. I think probably the this is kind of like the umbrella statement for everything. It was the Wild West of gaming, and it was kind of always that way even before the 90s, but it really felt like it took off in the 90s once the technology kind of caught up to what people wanted to do. Uh, there was almost no genre that was safe, and even genres that were kind of saturated, each one felt unique and different and interesting. Even if they weren't necessarily good, people were at least putting ideas out there and seeing what stuck. And I think that was the key point there, was no one had an award-winning formula yet, other than maybe like Nintendo, I would say. We know with their Mario platformers and things. But other companies who hadn't established themselves in the industry were coming forth and putting their hand, or putting their hat into the ring and seeing what they could come up with. So the first thing that kind of stands out to me is I miss the idea that every video game had to have they were trying to make the next Mario. And I think that drove people to try really, really hard with their games because they had to make it stand out. They had to do something to get people to look at their game. And if they had a cute little mascot or a badass mascot, that was kind of the way they did it. Where, look at games like Tomba. Tomba is a kind of a not game in itself. It's a very strange game, but it stands out because of its protagonist. He's just this pink-haired caveman thing. Bonk is kind of the same way. Like, Bonk games I don't feel are particularly amazing, but the character is what sticks with you. It's this little bald caveman. Jersey Devil for the PlayStation 1. Again, not a particularly great game. I went back to that for the first time in years, and I found myself not having as much fun with it as I remember having, but the character was there. Like, that's kind of what made me remember the game all these years, was the Jersey Devil himself. Blasto, another game for the PlayStation 1. Not a particularly good shooter, a little platform shooter or whatever, but the character was just kind of outlandish in there. So that sort of thing has sort of faded, I think. You still have people who go for your, that flagship character on the box. Halo's got Master Chief, Destiny, bad example. Destiny doesn't really have one. Everyone's faceless. Gears of War, has like the original team, I guess. I don't know much about those characters, but they're kind of there. God of War stuck around because he got Kratos. But a lot of these characters are kind of just, I don't know. I feel like they don't have as much charm to them. People aren't going to look back on like Ellie and Joel from Last of Us and be like, oh yeah, they're so fucking cool, man. Yeah, you remember that game? Blah 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 blah. Yeah, I just, it doesn't have the same feel to me, I guess. Maybe it's just me being a crotchety old man. But yeah, iconic characters. The next Mario and Sonic those were trippy times. Those were good times. Games back then, again, because formulas hadn't been established, for playstyles was huge. There were so many different genres, and a lot of them don't really exist much anymore outside of maybe like mobile games, I would say. Like, mobile games kind of picked up the slack in that regard, but barely. I remember, you had puzzle games, you had platformer games, you had shooter games, you had racer games, you had vehicular combat games, which are kind of a blend of two genres. You just not games like Katamari Damacy and stuff like that. You're just running around and collecting things in a ball. Like, what is even that? Bomberman, which is like party multiplayer game that I wish that franchise got more love. it's insane to think about how many different types of styles were being implemented. Like, look at Intelligent Cube was kind of an interesting puzzle game, or Devil Dice. I love Devil Dice. If anyone's never played that, seriously try to find it. If you, and I would even do you one better. You'd probably have better luck finding the PS2 sequel called Bombastic, or even just look it up on YouTube. Maybe I'll put video footage of it up someday. It's a ridiculously fun puzzle game. It's addictive as hell, and it feels like games that came out then would never come out today. Like, even if the formula had never been, even if the genre, how am I trying to phrase this? I firmly believe that, like, Devil Dice, if that had never come out before, and a game like it had never been done, there is no way that a publisher today would put their stamp of approval on a game like Devil Dice. It would be probably a mobile app game, like a very shallow, money-grubbing mobile app game. It saddens me to no end about that. Like, Trap Gunner was a action puzzle strategy game where you took control, you know, it was up to 2 players, and you took control of an agent, and you snuck around the battlefield. You could plant traps, and, you know, that was kind of the goal. You could either shoot each other or hit each other, but your traps are what did the most damage. So you were constantly trying to do this game of cat and mouse. You could find your opponent's traps if you were crouching and sneaking around. You could disarm their traps and add them to your inventory, but if your opponent caught up to you while you were trying to disarm their trap and they hit you, it would trigger the trap anyway. So, like, if you're trying to disarm a mine or a bomb, it would just blow up on you if they hit you. Or if it was one of the slingshot traps that, like, spin you and throw you down the map, it would just trigger that, and you could set up combos with these things. Like, Trap Gunner is a perfect game that would really be good if they just brought it back. The technology is there, and it's a game that doesn't really suit itself well to a split screen like it did on the PlayStation 1. So now that we have the online capabilities and stuff, this game would be great to bring back, but it never will because it's too much of a gamble. It's not something that they can stick with. So the pervasiveness of, like, shooters and these kind of I call them half-baked action games. Like, I'm trying not to harp on them too hard because I haven't played them a lot, but I've watched the footage and they just don't interest me that much. But you have games like, you know, I guess it's mostly Naughty Dog games. You know, the Uncharted franchise feels like what Lara Croft, you know, the Tomb Raider games should have been in the first place. And even Tomb Raider is just kind of a rehash of what Uncharted is doing, which is just a rehash of what Tomb Raider was doing in the first place. And they don't... You know, I don't know. I don't even know what I'm trying to say there. The constant recycling of ideas that work. You know, you don't see many racers anymore except, like, Forza and things like that. Like, these franchises that have kind of stuck around somehow. Gran Turismo, I think, is another one that still somehow shows up. Mostly, like, these quote-unquote simulator racers. And the big names of the past can't make it anymore because people don't seem to want that anymore, like the arcadey feel. I'm not sure if that's maybe a broad statement, or at least the market isn't showing that people want that. Because I know people are buying those games, like Need for Speed Underground, things like that was kind of like a good capturing of, you know, what Need for Speed was back in the day. Like Test Drive was a really great arcadey driver, you know, racing game. That's Test Drive's never coming back, and if it does, it's not going to be anymore what it was. Just stagnation is kind of the bane of existence right now. Games back then really felt like art in motion. I mean, even more now, people, you know, the graphics are there and everything looks pretty and it's almost like a movie. But games back then were very colorful, they were very outlandish. You know, it was kind of like you would sometimes just run into, like, a Salvador Dali painting or something in terms of, like, Earthworm Jim with just its total bizarreness. You know, Sonic the Hedgehog and Mario games were really colorful and just out there. They were their own world. Rise Star, again, has a bunch of different planets that you go to, and each one is completely different from the rest. Yeah, Tomba, again, is another one of those games that's very bright. Like, these worlds come to life, and there's a lot of care It feels like that's put into these. There's a lot of soul. Developers were able to make games that they wanted to make, not be forced to shell out the same old swill every single year. So you could feel that there was even if a game was bad, like that's what I'm getting at. There were a lot of bad games that feel like they had a lot of care put into them, and they just didn't work out for them the way they wanted it to. But they were still beautiful. Like they're beautiful in their own way. There really weren't many ugly games, you know, back then. Kind of just appreciate each game that came out. This is funny. Commercials. I'm looking at my notes here. Commercials were one of my favorite things for video games back in the day, because a lot of times they had absolutely nothing to do with the game itself. They were just so out there. The 90s was weird, man. Like, I know everyone will say that about their generation when they're growing up. Kids who grew up in 2016, you know, are gonna be like, man, my generation was stupid. But my generation was stupid. You know, you had commercials that, like I said, really didn't have much to do with the product that they were trying to sell. Like the Game Boy commercial, there was one where like this kid is fighting off a robot or something that has like, and they're playing the Game Boy, but they really don't show you much about the Game Boy. It did nothing to really show off the system's abilities whatsoever. But you remember that, and it was just like, oh, that's cool, Game Boy, robots, blah. And I mean, that was just how you distracted kids back then. Radical, whoa. The Mario Kart commercial. You know, there's only 2 speeds, fast and way too fast. And, like, they're just so over the top. Sega Genesis commercials, you know, the blast processing, and they were just ad campaigns against their opponents, but not really telling you what the system could do. Like, they would, one of the commercials, I think, was like, a Super Nintendo was strapped to the back of like an old hippie van of some sort, and it's going really slow, and the vehicle's like sputtering and barely able to go. But the Sega Genesis is strapped to like one of those drag racers, and it just like peels out. Basically, trying to say that the Sega Genesis is way faster than the Super Nintendo. It's just, it was such a bizarre time. Like I said, I know. It's pretty terrible marketing. It's atrocious marketing, because it's kind of false advertising. You're not really showing your customers what your product actually is and what it can do. You're just kind of giving them vague terms. But it was so otherworldly looking back on it, and I kind of miss it. Another thing that is, it's not about the games necessarily themselves, but it's an aspect of gaming that is gone. I miss instruction manuals and booklets that came with your game, and those only just stopped recently. Probably within maybe the past 5 years. Might have been more than that. I mean, you got them as far back as the PS2. I think even the 360 and the PS3 had them. But it was a way for them to obviously cut down on their production costs, so they don't put them in there anymore. But when I look at an old manual, usually games were intuitive enough that you didn't need an instruction book. But there are more games now, today, that get released that I would actually prefer to have a fucking instruction manual, because I don't understand the game. And it's not that I'm stupid, or it's not that I'm old, which I'm kind of getting there, but the games, everything would rather teach you through an hour-long tutorial level, which I feel is more insulting than making me read the instruction book. I'd rather just take a second to open the thing up and kind of go through it, because I did that as a kid. Before I put any game into my system, is I'd look through the book, because the book would sometimes have more than just, you're an idiot, here are your controls, and this is how you play the game, but it would also have lore about the game. It would have background, because a lot of times the games didn't go too in-depth on that, especially like the PlayStation 1 days, before, you know, people really started doing cinematics. But, you know, they would give you some more background in the book. They would give you a list of your power-ups and what your power-ups did. They would go through and tell you, like, some of the enemy names. Like, in my old Sonic 3 booklet, you know, it has, like, all the enemies in the game are kind of in there. And it's not really relevant. It's just kind of a nice touch. And it's got that iconic Sega art back then, you know, just kind of putting it there, and it's kind of just a little love letter to their game, just a little extra polish to kind of send it on its way. And it's just, it doesn't exist. It's gone. Even booklets in today's gaming like, hang on a second. Because I got some booklets here for some older games. Like, I'm gonna... Nope, I don't have it for that one. I lied. Give me a second. Give me a second. Alright, I'm gonna look at, like, the Devil Kings booklet for PS2. I love this game. Like, this is a booklet that actually has really good content in it. Like, you open up to your first page, and it's got your buttons, and tells you what they do, your basic controls. Then the next page, it's got some characters on there, you know, the main cast of characters, which is cool, gives you a little info on them, not a lot. And then, you know, it tells you how to go, what your moods are, you know. Yeah, and I mean, it just gives you a rundown of the game, like, you know, your spoils of war, your experience, how to do basic moves, special attacks, you know, and then, of course, it has a whole section on items, basic enemies. Like, this, little hints. I mean, it's, of course, and then the credits are in the back. You know, it's those little touches that kind of make you feel like you got a finished product, you know? Think of the booklet as the special features on your DVD, you know? Makes me really sad. Because it was just, I had a lot of fun looking through those manuals, I still do. You know, every time I get a new game, well, I say new game, every time I buy an old game and it has the booklet, I sit down and I go through it because it's nice. It's nice to have. You know? Makes you appreciate it more. Other things that I miss about old school gaming. Licensed games. Now, this is going to be kind of a controversial opinion. I don't feel licensed games sucked nearly as bad then as they do now. Granted, there are some pretty shitty licensed games back in the day. There were quite a few. But it feels like that gap, you know, like every licensed game you get now is hot garbage. You know, if it's like a movie tie-in and things like that, it's hot garbage. Some of the recent Spider-Man games, for instance, have not been very good at all. Like, Spider-Man is one of those games that I'm surprised has struggled. Hulk struggled for a long time to get a really good game until Ultimate Destruction came out, which, please play. If you ever played Prototype, it's kind of got that vibe to it. I think it was made by the same company anyway, but you're the Hulk, and it's a little older, but still really, really fun. So licensed games back then, I mean, I can ramble off a couple right here that were some of the best. There was X-Men 1 and 2 for the Sega Genesis. Seriously, good games. There's the Death and Return of Superman. That was on both the Genesis and the SNES, but I recommend the SNES version. I feel that one is the superior one this time around. Spider-Man Maximum Carnage, one of my favorite beat-em-ups. I prefer Sega Genesis version over the SNES version. The Incredible Hulk actually had a decent-ish licensed game for the Sega Genesis and the SNES, which I'm actually about to buy again. So, preference on that one, I played it on the Genesis, so I'm gonna have to kind of lean on that one. Marvel War of the Gems was really good for the SNES. And I guess the last one I'll mention is probably X-Men Mutant Apocalypse. That was on the SNES. But I mean, there were a lot. And a lot of them were actually pretty decent. I think a lot of them were made by LJN, which I kind of find funny too, because they're known for kind of shitty games. But I think their licensed games weren't really that bad. Unless I have shit taste in games. I mean, that's very possible. There were also a lot of Saturday morning cartoon licensed games that weren't totally terrible either. You know, you had like Ah Real Monsters. I believe Rocco might have had a game at one point in time. I'm trying to think. There was a cartoon called Family Dog, which was kind of funny. It didn't last very long, but that got a game. And that game's super short, but I actually like that game. I have a soft spot for it, even if it's not very good. So, it was just... Again, it kind of caters back to... I felt like there was a lot of care put into games back then. They had to kind of stand out. I mean, I know a lot of these games were just for dumb kids and stuff, but I believe Ren and Stimpy had a few too. I don't remember how good they were. I think I only played Vidiots for the Game Boy, and that was kind of iffy. So I'm gonna have to pick up the one for Genesis and see if that's any good. The Beavis and Butthead ones was kind of funny too. MTV had a few tie-ins. Beavis and Butthead was kind of fun. That was a weird game, but it has a place in my heart, even though again it's not super good. because it's kind of like it's almost like a point-and-click adventure without being a point-and-click adventure. There's a lot of the whole goal of the game is you're trying to get your tickets back for a concert that that got shredded. So you have to go around the game and try to find these ticket pieces, and the shit that you have to go through to get these ticket pieces. It's a hard game. And I think that's another thing I miss is the difficulty for games back then. It's not on my list, but now that I mention it. Games now aren't particularly difficult. I know a lot of difficulty back in the day was kind of manufactured, I guess, because games they weren't long. I mean, anybody knows that a game back then, you could probably beat most of them like 20 minutes to a half an hour for most games, if it wasn't an RPG. So they oftentimes, fabricated this difficulty by putting cheap enemy placement, by making some enemies just do a ridiculous amount of damage, by depowering the player somehow. Oh, excuse me. The list goes on there. But it felt like there was a goal for you. Not every, games were beatable. You just kind of had to get better at them. So games like Ninja Gaiden, which is like a notorious game for being very difficult. I remember playing that game for the first time in years when I first moved into my apartment here. So that was probably about 3 years ago. Maybe 2 years ago, because Harold had just moved in. So it wasn't when I first moved. It was close after I first moved in. Anyway, so he had his NES and all of his whole collection, so I decided I was going to plug that in and I was going to play some Ninja Gaiden. And the first third, I guess the first 3/4 of the game, really not that hard. It's like the last level that gives you that level of bullshit difficulty with like the birds that spawn when you're trying to jump over pits. Some of the enemy placement can be really janky, and things like that. So like that game is hard at a bullshitly level for some reason. But it was, of course, to elongate the game to make you feel like your $50 back then is actually stretching you something. Because people wouldn't be happy if they were just plowing through a game that they spent a shit ton of money on in a less amount of time. Same thing today. People don't want to go out and spend $60 on a game and then beat it, like 30 minutes or so. But at the same time, I feel like the games now, their easy difficulty is supplemented by more content, which I feel is a wash. So it's nice to have a big game, but if that big game is shit easy all the time, then I would rather just go back to a game that has less content, but is actually genuinely challenging. Maybe that's just ass-backwards thinking, for all I know, but that's my opinion. That's how I feel about it. Like, Comic Zone is one of those games that, I mentioned in my previous video. The game can be challenging. It's very challenging. There's a lot of guessing to do, item management and things like that, but the game is only a half hour long. I would take that. Star Fox 64, which is probably number 2 on my top 5 favorite games ever. It's one of those games that's not very long. You can beat it in about an hour, but the game has a challenge level to it, especially if you want to get to the higher pathway, the true pathway, I guess, if you want to call it that. You have to know where all the secrets are, and you have to perform exceptionally well every time you play the game, and I like that. I'm trying to think of another good game right off the top of my head. I think most beat-em-ups are kind of games that I like that. They can get really challenging, but you kind of learn how to handle the game, even though beat-em-ups are notorious for their cheap level design and stuff because they're quarter munchers. But like Streets of Rage, I don't think I've ever beaten Streets of Rage, and I never really feel frustrated for never beating it. It gives me something to look forward to, and even if I do beat it, then it's one of those things where I want to beat it faster. I want to be better at it. Games made you want to be better at it. Because most games now, modern games, if I beat them once, I generally don't touch them unless they have multiplayer. They don't give me a goal to look forward to. I guess next topic, it's something that I'll talk about in what I don't like about modern gaming, but it ties into this too. I like the fact that games really didn't have a lot of cutscenes back then. There was not a lot of interruption of my gameplay. Because when I play a video game, I want to play a video game. If I want to watch a movie, I'd go to movies. So a lot of old games kind of cater to that, where they pick up and play. Because I don't always have a lot of time to play a video game. It's either sometimes before I go to work, when I come home from work, I'm tired, and I don't want to spend what little gaming time I have before I go to bed going through cutscenes. There are some games I'll accept their cutscenes because I like the game, like Shadows of Mordor has like a lot of dialogue and things like that, but I enjoy the dialogue, I enjoy the story in that, so I'm a little more forgiving of it, and the cutscenes don't take forever. And I'm pretty sure every cutscene is skippable. That's the key point, is if the cutscene is there but it's skippable, I am much more forgiving of it. Because sometimes I just don't care about the exposition. You know, if I want to know about the story, I'll play it again at a later time when I have time to sit down and watch all this stuff. Or if it was like other games, after you unlocked a cutscene, you could go into a menu, you know, an options menu, and you could watch all cutscenes that you had unlocked. So you could kind of go back and be like, what the hell did I miss in that cutscene I skipped? And you don't have to play the game over again. So cutscenes just feel intrusive, so even old games like NES games would have a cutscene, but like I said, you could hit start and skip it. Or they were like slideshows, and it was only a couple of slides before you went to the next level. Really miss that. Just let me play my video game. That's all I want to do. Pac-Man ahead, super long cutscenes, I'd probably kill myself. Secret levels, and secrets in general, seem to be kind of lost. Doom did a good job about bringing those back, the new Doom, where if you explored the level enough, you would find secret health, you would find secret armor, bullets, maybe a weapon, and that sort of stuff is just doesn't exist, I don't think, anymore. Some games will make you look for stuff, right? But it's not like it. Like, developers used to go out of their way to make secret spots. Like, they were purposely put there, and the game would often tell you when you found that area that was a designated secret, because you could find something looking through your game, but you don't know if it was actually a secret or if you just found it by pure luck, you know what I mean? It's like, was this always intended to be found, or was this something they purposely hid on me, and now I'm being rewarded for exploring? I guess is what I'm getting at. So, like in Duke Nukem Time to Kill, each level has like 3 or 4 secret rooms, and the game will tell you when you find them. So like in the first level, you go into like the strip club, and behind the counter there's a button, and you hit the button and it opens a door. That's a secret. You go in there and it tells you it's a secret room. You kill the enemy and you get some armor, I think. And in that same level, then you can go into someone's apartment, which is like a dominatrix, and she's sitting there, and she tells you when you go up to talk to her, she's like, turn out the lights and I'll show you the meaning of pain. So you turn off the lights, and it causes her bed to slide forward, and then there's an item there. Pipe bombs, I think. So those aren't super well hidden, but there are some that are hidden. Like you have to run around and look for them, and they might not be a switch per se, but a wall that you break, and things like that. Like, I love a game that rewards you for exploring, and even when it indicates to you that yes, this was a purposeful secret, good job, you found it, here's your reward, here's some power-ups, here's some items, here's some health, weapons, ammo, whatever you want, whatever. Tomb Raider, I think, was another one that had a lot of secrets you'd have to dig for, because that was the name of the game. It was an exploration game. Bonus levels, I thought, were just always kind of fun. They were a little detour from the main gameplay. Like the footage I have up here, of course, of Rise Star, you'll see me hit a couple of secret levels. And they're not super hard, you know, it's just get to the treasure chest. But they're fun. You can get an item, you can get points, which can lead to secret to extra one-ups. Lord knows you need one-ups in these games. I mean, you probably see me get mauled a couple of times. This is the first time I played Rise Star in probably about 12 years. Speaking of secrets, in this footage of Rise Star, you'll see me sometimes like headbutting walls, and an item will fall down. That's, again, rewarding you for exploring. You kind of find some of them on accident, but it then clicks in your mind that maybe there's more of these elsewhere. So you start just trying things out, and it gives you, it slows you down to like stop and look around. And you kind of enjoy the game a little bit more for it. And I guess that's all I have on my list. I'm sure I could think of other things if I sat down and thought about it hard enough, but I mean, I guess that's just it. I mean, games just were, it was a different era. It was just a different era of game design. It was a different era of people making these unique games and things that they wanted to do. Like, it surprises me how franchises that were really good just they just vanished. They just vanished. And I don't know if it's because people's taste in games have changed, or if it's just because developers are sticking to that formula. Like Ratchet and Clank have vanished until just recently, yeah? Like Jack and Daxter have been gone, Sly Cooper has been gone, and instead of Crash Bandicoot's been gone. So instead of recreating these characters, you know, or building up on their games, they just release like HD remakes or whatever remasters instead of continuing. It feels like the art of those characters, how to make these games, is gone, and I don't think we'll ever see them the way that they were before, because the same people who made them before aren't doing it anymore. That's why, like with Comic Zone, I would never want a Comic Zone sequel, because the people who did it are probably not around anymore, or at least if they are in the industry, they're somewhere else and doing something else, and they probably don't remember how to make that game. It would never be done justice. So I guess some games are just better off fading into nothingness, but I wish we could see more crazy stuff just crop up by the AAA development industry now. We're seeing kind of a rising resurgence on indie developers, like on Steam and stuff. Undertale was kind of like their take on, you know, strange RPGs like, you know, Earthbound and things like that. So that's interesting. I like stuff like that. People want to hate on Five Nights at Freddy's, but at least that guy made something interesting. You know, he made something completely new. Yeah, it's just a jump scare game, but the lore that's kind of built up on it, and even the community is built up on it, it's actually really impressive, and I admire that franchise for that. He did, but he kind of falls into the... And I'm glad that he's not just making 2.0 versions of each game. They have different mechanics and things like that each time he tries to make these games, so they're not just complete sequels, you know, complete rehashes of the same thing. I mean, I'm sure there's more he can do with it. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's all I got to say about that. Put in the comments below what you like about old gaming. If you're a retro gamer, anyone who grew up in the '90s, or even if you're a newer, younger kid and you're getting into older games, how do you feel about gaming then and gaming now? Like, do you feel like gaming then is just bullshit, or do you actually think that older games are better? Or whatever. Like, I actually am legit interested in how people feel about gaming. Because like I grew up in the 90s, so I've just kind of seen this evolution of games, and just me personally, I feel like gaming has turned for the worse. But that's just me, and I know my era of gaming is over. People who grew up with like the Atari and think that was the quintessential gaming, we'll never see that again. And if we do, it probably will be right before we're dead. As sad and depressing as that is. So yeah, just if you have any topics you want me to discuss, I guess I should stop rambling there. If you have any topics you want me to discuss, hear my opinions on, please leave them in the comments below as well. I'd like to find new topics, and sometimes I kind of struggle to think of something new, because I don't want to always do gaming-related stuff, but it's the things I feel I know the best. And I'm going to try to do some tabletop discussions soon too, not just video games. But yeah, thank you for watching. Have a great day.